foreign tourists to disclose social media histories. And also, US seizes large tanker near Venezuela. Salam Malaysia Berdani, I'm Brendan Lepol. The administration of US President Donald Trump plans to order visa-exempt foreign tourists to disclose their social media histories from the last 5 years before entering the country. The proposal would apply to visitors from 42 countries, including Britain, France, Australia and Japan, who do not need a visa to enter the US. Currently, those travellers only need to apply for a waiver known as the Electronic System for Travel Authorization, which still requires them to provide certain personal details. Under the proposed new rules, the collection of social media data would become a mandatory part of the system's applications. Applicants would need to provide their social media histories from the last 5 years. They would also have to submit other high-value data fields, including phone numbers from the last 5 years, email addresses from the past decade, personal details of family members, and biometric information. The public has 60 days to comment on the proposal. The Trump administration has tightened curbs on entering the US, part of a sweeping crackdown on migration. The US has seized a large oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela, dramatically escalating tensions between Washington and Caracas. This matter was confirmed by President Donald Trump.
It's been an interesting day from the standpoint of news. As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
A video published by U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi showed troops rappelling from a helicopter onto the tanker's deck, then entering the ship's bridge with rifles raised. Bondi said the tanker was part of an illicit oil shipping network used to carry sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. U.S. media reported that the tanker was heading for Cuba, another American rival, and was detained by the U.S. Coast Guard. The move comes amid a huge U.S. naval buildup in the Caribbean and strikes on alleged drug boats. Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro, said the U.S. is bent on regime change and wants to seize Venezuela's oil reserves. Bolivian ex-president Luis Arce was arrested in La Paz as part of an investigation into alleged graft committed when he was an economy minister. Arce did not seek re-election in an August vote that brought an end to 2 decades of leftist rule in Bolivia. His presidency was marred by critical shortages of fuel and foreign currency that sparked numerous protests. The corruption probe stems from when Arce was Minister of Economy under socialist then-President Evo Morales, who was in office from 2006 to 2019. Arce is accused of authorizing transfers from the public treasury to the personal accounts of political leaders. One alleged beneficiary was leftist former lawmaker Lydia Patti, arrested in the same case last week. Sources in the prosecutor's office said Arce will have to answer to charges of dereliction of duty and economic misconduct. Under Bolivian law, members of the outgoing executive branch may not leave the country for 90 days after a change in government. In his first week in office, which started last month, President Rodrigo Paz claimed to have unearthed a cesspool of graft by preceding leftist governments. The collapse of 2 buildings killed at least 22 people in the northern Moroccan city of Fes, in the deadliest accident of its kind in the kingdom in recent years. The Fes prosecutor's office said women and children were among the dead and about 16 people were injured. Locals said the buildings did not meet standards, as authorities only allow two-story buildings in that area, but the two buildings had 4 floors each. The prosecutor's office said there had been a family celebration in one of the buildings at the time of the collapse, while the other was unoccupied. An investigation had been opened to determine the real causes of the incident. According to local authorities, preliminary reports suggested the buildings were constructed in 2006. The accident was the deadliest of its kind in a decade. In 2014, 3 buildings in the western city of Casablanca collapsed, killing 23 people.
Guna mentol jimat tenaga untuk lebih jimat.
Spain's Prime Minister has called on the international community to raise its voice to prevent the plight of Palestinians from being forgotten. Pedro Sanchez made the remarks during a meeting with Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas.
Alzando la voz para que no caiga en el olvido la dramática situación en la que se encuentra el pueblo palestino. Sí, hubo un acuerdo de alto el fuego, pero este acuerdo de alto el fuego debe ser real, no puede ser de cartón piedra. Por ello, no descansaremos hasta que cesen los ataques contra la población y no haya, por tanto, ninguna víctima más.
Sanchez also repeated Madrid's support for a two-state solution, describing it as the only possible solution to the conflict. He added genuine peace must be based on justice, and those responsible for the genocide must be held accountable. Abbas, meanwhile, thanked Spain for recognizing the state of Palestine in May last year. He praised Madrid's leadership in building an international coalition to expand recognition. Spain, where support for the Palestinian cause is strong, has been one of Europe's most vocal critics of Israel's military offensive in Gaza. On a related note, a top Hamas leader told Qatari news channel Al Jazeera that the group is open to a weapons freeze. However, it rejects the demand for disarmament put forward in the US-sponsored peace plan for Gaza. Khalid Meshal said Hamas is proposing a freeze or storage of weapons to provide guarantees against any military escalation from Gaza with the Israeli occupation. Now, he believes that with pragmatic American thinking, such a vision could be agreed upon with the U.S. administration. The U.S.-sponsored ceasefire deal is composed of 3 phases. Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu recently indicated it was about to enter the second phase. And under that phase, Israeli troops would further withdraw from their positions in Gaza and be replaced by an international stabilization force, while Hamas would lay down its weapons. Regarding the international peacekeeping force, Meshal said the group is open to its deployment along Gaza's border with Israel. However, it would not agree to the force operating inside the Palestinian territory, calling such a plan an occupation. He added mediators as well as Arab and Islamic nations could act as guarantors that there would be no escalation originating from inside Gaza. The United Nations interim force in Lebanon said Israeli forces fired on its peacekeepers in the country's south, urging Israel's army to cease aggressive behavior. It is the latest such incident reported by the peacekeepers in southern Lebanon, where UNIFIL acts as a buffer between Israel and Lebanon. UNIFIL said peacekeepers in vehicles patrolling the Blue Line were fired upon by Israeli army soldiers in a Merkava tank. It said one 10-round burst of machine gun fire was shot above the convoy, and 4 further 10-round bursts were fired nearby. It added both the peacekeepers and the Israeli tanks were in Lebanese territory at the time of the incident. UNIFIL noted that the Israeli military had been informed of the location and timing of the peacekeeping patrol in advance. It stressed that the attacks on or near peacekeepers are serious violations of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701. It called on the Israeli army to cease aggressive behavior and attacks on or near peacekeepers working to rebuild stability along the Blue Line. Israel carries out regular attacks on Lebanon despite the truce agreed by Israel and Hezbollah. US Fed makes third straight rate cut. Stay with us. The US Federal Reserve has lowered interest rates for a third consecutive time this year, but signaled it could hold off further reductions in the coming months. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said the central bank is well positioned to wait and see how the economy evolves.
The adjustments to our policy stance since September bring it within a range of plausible estimates of neutral and leave us well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks.
The reduction by a quarter percentage point brings rates to a range between 3.50% and 3.75%, the lowest in around 3 years, in a move aligned with market expectations. Powell said for now, the Fed is in the high end of the range of neutral rates, with neutral being a level that neither stimulates nor restricts economic activity. He added the U.S. economy needs several years where wages are higher than inflation for people to start feeling good about affordability. Fed officials, however, lifted their 2026 growth forecasts while easing inflation expectations and keeping their unemployment rate projection unchanged. The U.S. House of Representatives passed a massive defense policy bill, authorizing a record $901 billion in annual military spending. It is paving the way for the must-pass measure to become law for a 65th straight year. The tally was 312 to 112 in favor of the National Defense Authorization Act, sending it for consideration by the U.S. Senate, which is expected to pass in next week. The $901 billion in defense spending is $8 billion more than President Donald Trump's request earlier this year. The act also provides $400 million in military assistance to Ukraine in each of the next 2 years. It includes other measures reinforcing the U.S. commitment to Europe's defense. The bill includes measures to make life better for the troops, including a 4% pay raise and improvements in base housing. However, it does not include insurance coverage for military families to get fertility treatments. The legislation is a compromise between versions of the act passed earlier this year by the Senate and House, both controlled by Trump's Republicans. Mexican lawmakers have backed a measure to raise tariffs on goods from China and other countries that do not have trade agreements with Mexico, despite strong pushback from Beijing. The move, approved by the Senate, increases tariffs on imports of automobiles, textiles, clothing, plastics, appliances and other products, primarily affecting Chinese goods. Changing tariffs will also affect South Korea, India, Indonesia, Russia, Thailand, Turkey, Taiwan and Brazil. A total of 1,463 tariff lines will be modified. The proposed tariff rates had been lowered from an initial suggestion of 50% down to 20 or 35% for most categories of goods. However, the 50% rate would still apply in some cases. President Claudia Sheinbaum must now advance the new tariffs to take effect 1st January next year. Beijing previously said it opposes any coercion to impose restrictions on its exports.
Bersihkan penapis penghawa dingin dan tetapkan 24 darjah Celsius untuk lebih jimat.
Now, survivors of a deadly 2021 typhoon in the Philippines have filed a UK lawsuit against British oil giant Shell. My apologies. Seeking financial compensation for climate-related devastation. Typhoon Rai struck the southern and central regions of the Philippines in mid-December 2021, unleashing deadly floods that killed more than 400 people. The lawsuit was brought by British law firm Housefeld on behalf of 103 survivors. It argues that Shell carbon emissions contributed to climate change, impacting Philippine communities. A Shell spokesperson said, "This is a baseless claim and it will not help tackle climate change or reduce emissions." They added the suggestion that Shell had unique knowledge about climate change is simply not true. The case marks the latest step in a wider international movement to assign responsibility to major companies for climate damage, especially in the Global South. The claim has already been listed on the website run by the High Court in London. Nepalese officials have inked a landmark agreement with representatives of the Gen Z movement whose September uprising toppled the Himalayan nation's government. The demonstrations were initially triggered by anger over a brief government ban on social media. They were fueled by deeper frustration over economic hardship and corruption. The agreement was signed by Interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki and Boj Bikram Thapa, who represented those who were killed or injured during the protests. The newly signed agreement lays out measures aimed at curbing corruption, strengthening governance, and provisions for electoral and constitutional reforms. It also commits the government to address the demands of families of those killed or wounded during the uprising and adds to the mandate of the commission investigating the events. Nepal's political landscape remains volatile, while widespread mistrust of long-dominant parties complicating efforts to ensure credible polls. Iceland's state broadcaster has announced it would boycott next year's Eurovision Song Contest. It became the fifth country to pull out after Israel was given the go-ahead to compete. Spain, the Netherlands, Ireland and Slovenia all announced a withdrawal from the world's biggest live music competition last week after a meeting with organizers, the European Broadcasting Union, EBU. EBU members had been expected to vote on new measures brought in to tackle alleged irregularities in voting in previous events, and after strong criticism of Israel's war in Gaza. But organizers said a vote was not necessary, paving the way for Israel to compete. After a board meeting, Iceland's broadcaster RUV said it had decided not to participate in the Eurovision Song Contest in Vienna next year. The board of RUV also requested for the removal of Israel's state broadcaster from the competition. The broadcaster said it is clear that neither joy nor peace will prevail regarding the participation of RUV in Eurovision. And in sports, Red Giants and ACL2 campaign with home defeat. Stay with us. Selangor ended their AFC Champions League 2 ACL2 campaign without a single win after suffering a 1-0 defeat to Singapore's Lion City Sailors in their final Group G match at the Petaling Jaya City Council MBPJ Stadium last night. It was Selangor's fifth defeat of the group stage with their 1-1 draw against Bangkok United at the Pathum Thani Stadium on 26 November, their only positive results in the competition this season. Selangor had earlier shown promising signs in the first half, with captain Faisal Halim coming close in the 15th minute before Grigor Morales threatened again shortly after, but both efforts were well handled by the Sailors' defence. Lion City nearly struck first in the 25th minute through Maxine Leschen, whose curling left-footed free kick crashed against the crossbar, keeping the hosts temporarily in the contest. The visitors secured the decisive goal 5 minutes into the second half when Si Ndenge finished calmly from a well-weighted pass by Song Uyong, leaving goalkeeper Kamalullah Al-Hafiz with no chance. Head coach Christophe Gamil had targeted a morale-boosting final win, but the Red Giants ultimately concluded the group stage without a single victory. Persib Bandung of Indonesia topped Group G with 13 points after a 1-0 win over Bangkok United, with Bangkok United and Lion City Sailors tied on 10 points, while Selangor finished bottom with just 1 point. In European football, Erling Haaland scored his 34th goal for club and country this season to give Manchester City a 2-1 win at Real Madrid on Wednesday. It was the second successive home defeat for Real following their 2-0 reverse against Celta Vigo at the weekend, and heaped more pressure on coach Xabi Alonso, whose side have won just 2 of their last 8 in all competitions. For Haaland, though, this was a 21st goal in 21 City games this season and a 51st in 50 Champions League starts, while Nico O'Reilly scored his first goal in the competition. Rodrigo gave Real, who were missing Kylian Mbappe, the lead just before the half-hour mark with a crisp shot across Gianluigi Donnarumma into the far corner. But Academy product O'Reilly equalized just 7 minutes later, reacting quickest to prod home the loose ball from inside the 6-yard box after Thibaut Courtois had saved Josko Guardiol's header. And Haaland was able to fire City in front from the penalty spot on 43 minutes after VAR intervened to punish Antonio Rudiger for wrestling the Norwegian forward to the ground to prevent him reaching across. It was a breathless end-to-end second half, and Jude Bellingham could have done better than chip over the bar with only Donnarumma to beat, while Courtois made a fingertip save to deny Jeremy Doku. Benfica's Richard Rios scored a goal and set up another to seal a vital 2-0 victory over Napoli on Wednesday, boosting the Portuguese side's hopes of reaching the Champions League knockout stage. The result reignited Benfica's European campaign, clinching a second consecutive win after a poor start, and lifting them to 6 points and up to 25th place, just 1 point outside the playoff spots. Benfica dominated the early exchanges as Nicolas Otamendi headed over inside 6 minutes before Napoli goalkeeper Vanja Milinkovic-Savic was called into action, pulling off a superb one-handed save to deny the hosts on 11 minutes. The breakthrough arrived on 20 minutes when a floated cross dropped into a crowded area, with Franjo Ivanovic knocked down, triggering a scramble that Rios reacted to fastest, cheering in from close range to give the hosts the lead. Benfica doubled the lead 5 minutes into the second half when Rios rolled an inch-perfect ball across the box for Leandro Barreiro, who darted in front of his marker and flicked a smart finish inside the near post. Jose Mourinho's side pressed for a third goal, but Milinkovic-Savic kept the score down with 2 smart saves to deny substitute Vangelis Pavlidis.
Momentum kemenangan sudah tercipta. Harimau Malaya garang di Sukan C. Selepas menudukkan Laos 4-1, ujian sebenar menanti.
Jaringan penyama daripada Malaysia.
Saksikan skuad negara kita dipacu semangat kemenangan menentang musuh tradisi. Siaran langsung perlawanan Vietnam bertemu Malaysia Khamis 11 Disember. Sepak mula pada pukul 5 petang di saluran OK dan Sukan RTM. Juga boleh disaksikan secara penstreaman langsung di RTM Click.
Malaysia celebrated its first gold medal of the 2025 SEA Games yesterday after the national men's 5-a-side 5S hockey team defeated Indonesia 7-3 in the final at the Royal Thai Air Force Stadium RTAF. The win was made sweeter as it came in the debut of the 5S hockey events at the Biennial Games. Malaysia started strongly, taking a 3-0 lead in the first period through Muhammad Akimullah Anwar Isok, Muhammad Abid Sufyan Madrusli and Luqman Nul Hakim Ahmad Shukran, who scored in the 7th, 8th and 14 minutes. The national side kept the momentum going in the second half with 4 more goals. Akimullah added 2 more in the 17th and 29 minutes to complete his hat-trick. Abid struck again in the 22nd minute and Shafiq Iqmal Daniel Suzaini sealed the big win with the last-minute goal. Indonesia replied with 3 goals, one from Muhammad Fatur in the 19th minute and a quick brace from Alfandi Prastio in the 24th minute. National head coach Wan Roslan Wan Abdul Rahman said he was proud of the team's efforts in delivering Malaysia's first goal of the games.
Alhamdulillah atas kemenangan hari ini, dan kemenangan ini merupakan kemenangan untuk pingat emas yang pertama kepada Malaysia, dan alhamdulillah kami pun berbangga atas sumbangan kepada kontingen Malaysia. Dan apa yang saya terapkan kepada pemain, mereka kena cipta sejarah, dan sejarah telah tercipta pada hari ini dengan kesungguhan pemain untuk menang perlawanan menentang Indonesia.
Malaysia entered the final with full confidence after sweeping through the round-robin stage. In Taekwondo, nobody expected them to win the SEA Games gold, but the national women's Taekwondo team did it with calm focus along with crazy training hours. They stunned favourites Thailand in the recognised women's team final at the Fashion Island shopping mall in Bangkok. The Malaysian Pumse trio of Jing Yingxia, Zin Wong and Mei Yi Yo outscored hosts Thailand 8.560 to 8.450 in a tense final. In retrospect, they were not even listed among Malaysia's projected gold medal prospects, but their crisp synchronization and clean accuracy carried them over the line. Although they only formed as a full competitive unit this year, they had trained together on and off for around 2 years. Their chemistry, polished through months of repetitive drills, proved decisive on the mat in Bangkok. Even performing in front of a hostile Thai crowd did not shake them.
เทไรมนต์หาสะกดมนต์ไตรรักคู่หลงกูแต่เพิ่มเปิ้ลห้าที่นอนไม่ได้แต่กูไม่ไปหาจะเสียกาตาเรียบเปลี่ยนแต่กูเอามาเลยก็คือก้อยเตย
Sukan SEA Thailand 2025.
Jangan lupa saksikannya hanya di RTM. Yahoo!
Semangatnya sudah terasa. Nantikannya hanya di RTM. Penyiar Rasmi.
That's it from us this afternoon. Our top story, foreign tourists to the US to disclose social media histories. Malaysia Tonight comes on at 8:30 p.m. this evening on TV1 and MyTV's Berita RTM news channel. Thanks for watching. I'm Brendan Paul and take care.